April 1st. Our group had been transferred to a sake brewery situated in the Nagaoka mansion in Nagarayama. Blech, finally got that out. Saito was occupied with the bustling scene, ordering warriors around and helping with the unpacking. Saito, how are you feeling?
Fine. I will not make the same mistake twice.
Are you sure?
Is there something you are implying? Do you mean to think I am lying?
Saito, I don't know how to tell you this, but you aren't the best at taking care of your body. So I'm a little worried that you may push yourself too hard again, and that you could faint again.
Well, Shinpachi and Sano departed us, and Soji is in no condition to fight because of his disease. Both the chief and commander are feeling the brunt of this burden, surely.
Then why don't you ask Soma or Nomura?
Much of what needs to be done can only be done by myself. Resting is not an option.
I understand where you're coming from, Saito, but you must find time to rest, or you won't be able to work as hard as you want to. And if that were to happen, then it would be an even heavier burden on Kondo and Hijikata. Perhaps I was being a tad too forward with my argument, but it needs to be said. If I hadn't been as forceful or forward, I doubt that Saito would have paid my words any heed. He smiles.
You are being unexpectedly stubborn today. Why is it that you care so much for my health?
Well, it's for the Shinsengumi. I don't have a reason. Baka. I don't have a reason. I'm just really worried about you, Saito. After all, my father was a doctor.
Well, I need not be of any of your concern. There are many for whom your concern would be better suited.
Well, it's you I'm worried about more than anyone else at the moment. And it's because you keep pushing yourself and making all of us worry about you. Ever since you became a Fury, you've been working day and night. Anyone can see that it has been wearing you down, but you keep insisting you're fine. I think you're only worrying everyone around you more than you think. Saito took in my words carefully, and he cast his gaze towards the ground. That's right, I'm worried about you, you dummy.
You know, I think you're right. I believe I was too harsh in saying that I did not need your concern. For that, I apologize. So, for now, I shall rest, just as you suggested.
Wait a minute. You aren't going to rest now?
There is a document I have yet to write. I cannot simply rest while in the middle of writing it.
Hearing that he was refusing yet again to rest almost made me lose all the power in my body. I thought I could faint at any moment. What? I thought you were... Wait, you were upset that he was going to rest now, and now you're upset that he isn't going to rest now? Chizuru, pick a lane and stay in it, please. Don't Furies normally feel better when they rest during the day and act during the nighttime? So, wouldn't you think it's better if you rest now and then continue to work when the sun's down?
Well, I am listening to you, and I will be resting, will I not? Is that not enough?
At this rate, it seemed there would be no convincing him to sleep until the evening. Rather, I had a suspicion that he would sneak around and work until the sun rose once more. So I marched up to his desk and I gathered all of the parchment and documents that he had been working on. Fine then. Have it your way. I'm going to ask Kondo to write all of these documents. Dang. Chizuru's like, that's it. I'm taking charge right now. I've had enough of your shenanigans.
What? Don't be a fool. This is not the type of work that Kondo need concern himself with at this time.
It's not like that at all. Kondo has also expressed concern about your well-being. If I tell him that it's time for Saito to take a break, then I am sure he will understand and carry on whatever needs to be done.
That is not the point. My point is that I cannot allow the chief to partake in more meaningless tasks. enough of this. Hand me back those documents.
No, you promised me that you'd rest today. A warrior does not go back on his promises, right? At last, Saito had no witty refutation to offer. He sighed heavily and his shoulders drooped in defeat. Or dropped in defeat. Well done, Chizuru.
Oh. You never planned to listen to my side from the beginning, did you? Fine. Have it your way.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to make your bed immediately. I darted out of the room preparing Saito's bed before he had a chance to change his mind. She's so anxious for him to get some sleep. Gotta make your bed so that you can mess it up again. I'm gonna watch you and make sure you sleep. Alright?
So, just how long do you intend on staying here?
Until you rest. I'm afraid that the moment I leave your room, you're going to get right back up and continue working.
Look, I have prepared for bed. And I have passed along my work to the chief. After forcing me to go through all of this, you still do not want to trust me.
I'm sorry. It's just that I'm that worried about you.
Ah.
A look of confusion was stretched across Sayato's face, causing him to slump disappointedly, but I could see a smirk begin to form in the curl of his pink lips. Saito smirking? Saito plopped atop the futon, and he lifted the duvet over his body, letting his legs bury under them. Oh. As I watched him ready himself for sleep, something familiar came to mind.
Something the matter?
Oh, nothing. I was just reminded of something.
What?
It was a dream I had. I was wondering, are you thinking about when he came and nursed you when you were sick? Because I was thinking this is very similar to that. Like what happened then, except it's roles reversed. A few years ago, I came down with a terrible cold and was bedridden. But in my dream, you held my hand. Was it a dream? Was it? Is something wrong, Saito? Your face is flushed red.
Nothing. I just hadn't anticipated you to remember such a thing.
Wait, what? Don't tell me! Saito's eyes were hastily averted from my own.
I had no ulterior motives. Commander informed me that you were ill in bed, and so I went to check on you.
Yes, I know that. I just wanted to say, I'm glad it wasn't a dream.
You're glad?
You have no idea how much it meant when you held my hand that night, Saito.
I see.
Saito's body shrunk as I spoke, perhaps as a show of discomfort. Saito?
What is it?
May I hold your hand? Dang.
My hand? Why? I am no child.
Hey! I'm not trying to treat you like a child. But when your hand embraced mine all those nights ago, I felt so at peace. So I was hoping I could return the favor and make you feel some sense of calm as well. Is that not okay with you?
Yukimura.
A calculated look was aimed towards me by Saito, as if he were hoping to read my motives. What motive? I got no motives. I'm pure of heart. He moved his gaze awkwardly away from me, but his hand was outstretched in my direction. You can take it if you want, but maybe I'll just leave it hanging here if you don't. I smiled, grasping his hand gently just as he did mine on that distant wintry night. Having the two of us here together really brings back the memories, doesn't it? Well, maybe not exactly, as I suppose you and I have swapped places.
Right.
He clasped onto my hand in return, but I noticed he seemed distracted, like something was pulling his heart somewhere miles away from here.
But Shinpachi and Sano were here then too. Soji, too, had fallen ill, but not to the extent that he could not leave his bed as he cannot now. Gen and Yamazaki still lived and breathed, and neither Heisuke nor myself had become furies.
Yes. Memories of Kyoto came flooding back to me, leaving a bittersweet taste in my mouth as I recounted them. Back then, there were still plenty of challenges that everyone faced, but even so, we faced them together, and we thrived. But now...
It is you. You are the only one who is unchanged.
What?
And just like back then, wherever I go, you are right there, behind me. Your voice calls out to me, beckoning my attention at the drop of a sword. This alone is a constant.
Come to think of it, you're right. Thinking about how long we had known each other, all the moments gathering in the glass of our friendship, makes me smile.
For myself, however, how long it will last is uncertain. Nothing exists that binds you to us until whatever end awaits us.
No. I will always remain by everyone's side. Besides, I have nowhere else to call home. I realize that, with Father becoming an agent of the demons, there really is nowhere else I can go. My heart sank heavily in my chest, thinking about how what I'd regarded as family for so long was now just a ghost of a thought. So, here was where I'd belonged. Saito scanned me with inquisitive eyes, perhaps on the cusp of saying something in response. Then after a long pause, he opened his mouth.
Nowhere else to go, you say. Just like myself.
His words weren't necessarily directed at me, but rather he was murmuring under his breath. We're not so different, you and I. A handful of days passed since we moved to the Nagaoka mansion in Nagareyama. All of the men stationed here were supposedly participating in a training exercise today. I was unable to learn what exactly the exercise entailed, but from what I could gather, it was a drill to practice using some of the new Western artillery and battle techniques as adopted by our enemies. Since we had arrived here, however, I noticed that Kondo was absent, slumping further and further into a depressive malaise as the days went on. Good grief. Sanon, too, was nowhere to be seen, as I learned he was becoming more active during the moonlight hours. I was sure that these observations were simply because of the concerted effort to galvanize the troops into defeating the Satsuma Choshu, but... Would you like some tea, Saito?
Pay me no mind. A wiser move would be to bring the chief some tea at this time.
But I already brought him some. I don't want you to keep working so much. I think if you sprinkle in some breaks from time to time, you'll be able to work more efficiently. I quietly placed a cup of tea onto his desk. Saito glanced at the cup from the corner of his eye, and he spoke in a low tone.
How is the chief doing?
Well, earlier when I saw him, it seemed like he was reading a book.
I see.
His answer came curtly, and Saito's line of sight dropped to the ground, staring sternly at nothing. Perhaps Kondo's declining mood was becoming a distraction for Saito as well, proving that Kondo's good humor was dearly missed by all of us.
You know, doubt was quite unfamiliar to me before any of this.
Huh?
Whether it was in dealing with old comrades, spies who had infiltrated the Shinsengumi, and certainly regardless of whether it was a friend or foe. Once challenged, the call to end a life was a message rarely questioned or considered. In the past, my life had only once come under threat in a duel proposed by Shinpachi.
What? I gasped audibly as I couldn't help but express astonishment. I had heard that Saito had previously acted behind the scenes performing espionage missions before, but... You had a duel with Nagakura. So, it wasn't like a training or sparring match, but rather a fight to the death, right?
Exactly. There was nothing to hinder Shinpachi's blade as he charged at me with the intent to take my life. In an effort to avoid killing Shinpachi, and to ensure that the Shinsengumi belonged under the jurisdiction of Kondo and Hijikata, I accepted his duel. because I was convinced that the Shinsengumi served as a gathering place for only the truest warriors.
Stories of the Shinsengumi's illustrious past were not foreign to me, especially when it came to the descriptive quality of Sayato's observations, but hearing him tell this story now, I picked up that it was not his usual reminiscence. So, do you still feel the same way about the Shinsengumi as you did back then? Saito had for so long possessed the passionate urge to fight, even going so far as to cross swords with Nagakura. Did this fire still burn as brightly in his heart now as it did all those years ago?
I feel like I am still the same as back then. But perhaps there is nothing in this world that is safe from the harrowing winds of change.
Saito was having an important epiphany. One that, after close consideration, must have come to both Hirata and Nagakura as well. That we are all victims of an impermanence that, for a brief and wondrous time, can make us feel something until life inevitably pulls us somewhere different. Maybe what had bothered Saito most was the search within himself for an answer as to whether or not he was strong enough to face that time when it came. So, what's your answer, Saito?
Mine?
Why, yes, and don't answer like you would to either Kondo or Hijikata. Even as a captain of the Shinsengumi, is there an order that you simply would flat out refuse?
No such order exists. The orders of Kondo and Hijikata constitute my will to act.
Are you sure?
Of course. It is how I have lived my life, even up until this point.
I was a little frustrated by his unwillingness to give me a straight answer, but it was clear there was no point in continuing this conversation, so I stayed quiet. Just then...
Saito! Saito! Are you here? Yes, what is the matter?
I wondered, when she said Kondo is reading a book, I'm like, is it the book from last time?
Soldiers are surrounding our compounds. Please prepare to evacuate these premises immediately. What? Soldiers? Who could it be? We still have yet to figure it out ourselves. But supposedly, one of our men shot an incoming enemy soldier who stood up again as if nothing had happened.
Shimada's ominous report brought a weary expression out of Saito.
A fury. It must be. I assume so as well. Gather all of the men immediately. This has now escalated to an emergency situation. Yes, sir!
Here we go again. Men were racing frantically throughout the compounds, and after a frenzied moment, all of the men staying in the Nagaoka mansion were gathered in the common room.
Just what is going on? We have only just arrived here. How could they have found us and prepared an offensive strike so quickly? Yeah, something's fishy. They found us pretty quick. Kinda hard to believe it was just good luck.
It seemed as though even Hijikata, of all people, was caught off guard by this predicament. Say, does anyone know where Sunon or Heisuke are? I don't see them around here.
Well... could they still be sleeping?
As Saito wondered aloud, Shimada glanced at him timidly before offering up his hesitant answer.
Well, actually... I have searched everywhere for both of them, but neither Sunon nor Todo are present. I had expected to find them in their rooms sleeping, but both of their bedrooms were empty.
Shimada's revelation was followed by a nervous pause in the room, and everyone stared at one another. Both Hijikata and Saito were doubly perplexed. Perhaps they were all thinking the same thing. It was Kondo, however, who voiced his concern.
Must have been a spy, eh?
No, that couldn't be. A cursory glance around the room gave the impression that the sentiment wasn't felt by just myself. However, given the circumstances of our situation, there weren't too many other plausible explanations for why all of this was happening.
To have so many of you escaping or leaving the Shinsengumi, the blame rests on my shoulders alone.
Kondo's voice barely hovered above a faint murmur, and his disheartened spirit eluded no one in the room. Then he suddenly straightened his posture and spoke up.
I will handle this. I want all of you to retreat from here as far as you can while I buy you time.
Hijikata's eyes shot open in bewilderment, and he was the first to react to Kondo's command.
Kondo! Don't tell me!
He gazed intently into Kondo's eyes, searching for any sign of what Kondo was planning. Instead of speaking, Kondo flashed a calm smirk to his old friend, a look I had never seen before. This seemed enough to satisfy Hijikata, who stared plaintively in response to Kondo's restrained gesture. Hijikata bit his lips in silence and looked at the floor. After a little while, he glanced up once more.
Saito,
Whoop! I clicked a little too soon.
Saito, you take Yukimura and the rest of the men and head to Aizu. Use this house's back door. Should be able to slip out of here without being seen.
However, Saito, who normally would have bowed curtly to Hijikata's order and followed it no later than after it was said, did not budge.
Commander, pardon me, but I have my reservations about the two of you fleeing this predicament safely. I believe we stand a stronger chance of surviving if all of us were to fight them here and now. It is my intention to remain here with you. As is mine. I cannot flee in good conscience knowing that the two of you are going to stay behind.
Huh. You two sure are something. So you're saying that Kondo and I don't have what it takes to kill all of these bastards here ourselves? Hijikata's tone was light-hearted, but Saito's eyes were unwavering as he continued to stare at Hijikata. I think the way Hijikata was joking was a little bit strange to Saito, and his attitude was somewhat atypical to what we'd expect from the commander. Eventually, though, Hijikata's eyes glimmered with a kind light.
Just like you said, if we all stood our ground and tried to hold him off, then there's a chance we could probably make it out of here alive. But if all of us die, then who's gonna carry on the name of the Shinsengumi?
In that instant, Hijikata's words seemed to have struck a nerve with Saito, whose eyes beamed widely in response.
If we got killed out here, then we'd be remembered as the idiots who bit off more than they could chew by challenging the Imperial Court. Sure, we may be a bunch of farmers' boys, ronin, ruffians, and killers gathered under the shogunate's orders in Aizu, but...
Wandering warrior, sometimes vagabonds or the like who offer their swords for hire.
Don't you think that we deserve to have some say in this world too? That's why the only person who could survive and pass on the torch is you, Saito.
Hijikata was a foot away from Saito, making the delivery of his suggestion all the more intimate. Saito watched Hijikata's eyes with purpose, confirming to himself that all of his loyalty was not unfounded. After a moment of quiet deliberation, Saito stood tall.
Understood. I have faith that I shall see you two in due time.
Each word came slowly but confidently from Saito. To that, a wry grin emerged from Hijikata's lips.
Yeah, just wait up for us. We'll be right behind you.
Within Hijikata's words, too, was a self-assured force. Satoshi stayed behind with Kondo this time. Interesting. Toshi, you better not die. I swear. Those of us asked to evacuate were careful not to make too much noise as we opened the back door. Then we were met with a brilliant ray of light. Oh.
Oh!
Saito instinctively covered his face with his hand, and his brow furrowed in reaction to the blinding light. Are you okay, Saito?
Pay me no heed. Our escape is our top priority.
Saito tiptoed carefully through the shadows to evade detection, and he soundlessly led us to a corridor where we could exit. All of a sudden, Shimada stopped in his tracks as something caught his attention. What's the matter, Shimada?
There's someone over there. No.
Shimada's eyes shot open with fear as he gestured towards the front gate of the Nagaoka mansion. The person standing at the gate was none other than... Sanan, who was engaging with soldiers adorned in their Western uniforms. However, their conversation was conspicuously relaxed. It didn't seem like he was threatened at all.
A close inspection indicates those guns are the same used by the Satsuma and Choshu soldiers.
Does that mean they're a part of the Imperial Army? But why would Sanan be with them?
We cannot possibly hear their conversation from this vantage point. Let us approach closer.
Both Shimada and I nodded, and we sneaked carefully towards the front gate. Alright. We're gonna be the watch right now.
Come. This way. Our riflemen are currently occupied with a training exercise today. Attacking them now means striking the heads of the Shinsengumi when they expect it least.
Alright, men. Hear that? Most of their riflemen are gone. Let's get those bastard captains. Yes, sir!
With their mark, all of the armed Imperial riflemen stormed the compounds. I could almost feel the blood drain from my body. What could all of this mean? For some reason, our sworn enemies were able to locate the Shinsengumi and plan a strike. And those men, they spoke with Sanan as if they were familiar allies in casual discussion.
Just as Chief predicted.
Then that must mean... Was Sanan really the one who leaked information of our whereabouts to the enemy? Both Kondo and Hijikata, who were still inside the compounds, were completely unaware of this. What should I tell Saito? They've got... Let's go. Our orders were to head to Aizu. Saito, let's head to Aizu. Despite how badly I wanted to return inside the Nagaoka mansion and warn Kondo and Hijikata of what we'd uncovered, we cannot let Kondo and Hijikata's sacrifice to buy our time to escape go to waste. Saito timidly stared at the ground, burying his teeth into his supple lip. But eventually...
We are going to Aizu.
It was as if he'd come to an important realization. Then, Saito turned to stare into my eyes.
You reminded me of the duty I promised to uphold. Thank you.
I got you, Boo. Don't worry. I know I nag you all the time to rest, but I really do have your back. After offering his curt words of appreciation, Saito immediately turned around and began to march away.
It will be all right. The two of them are fierce warriors, not so easily beaten. I have no doubts that they will reunite with us just as they said. So, for now, let us embark and then rendezvous when the time comes.
And so, the three of us made our way for Aizu. We can do it. That day was likely the longest and most anxiety-inducing day I had ever experienced in my life. Time seemed to move at a glacier's pace, and whenever I found myself alone, it was impossible to keep myself from thinking about the worst-case scenario. I had to tell myself, everything will be fine. Kondo and Hijikata couldn't die. They will reunite with us soon. I repeated the sentiment until the words were burned in my mouth, and it helped to soothe my anxiety. We patiently awaited their return. After what felt like an eternity... Hey! Good to see you guys.
Hey, sorry guys. Didn't mean to keep you waiting too long. Who would have ever thought we'd leave our headquarters like that?
Hijikata! Heisuke! I felt warm tears slide down my cheeks. I was so glad to see them. Hijikata and Heisuke were both safe and sound.
What a relief it is to see both of you emerge safely.
Shimada too seemed flushed with emotion, and he nodded repeatedly as he spoke in relief. But Heisuke, where have you been this whole time?
Hmm? Oh, I caught Sanan leaving the compounds earlier in the afternoon. So, I tried following him, but he lost me. I happened to be making my way back to the compounds when I bumped into Hijikata. Huh.
Never would have guessed Sanan, of all people, would go and sell Kondo out like that. He wasn't the type to fall for such a cheap trap like that by the Satsuma and Choshu.
My mind raced back to the scene back there. I felt troubled, seeing someone whom we had regarded as a close friend succumb to menacing temptations. Coming back to reality, I saw the gears turning in Hijikata's head as he ruminated aloud.
It's all my fault, isn't it? I'd noticed the son of a bitch sneaking out at night to murder people for their blood, over and over again, but I didn't do shit about it.
Sir, you're not the only one to blame. I didn't do anything to stop Sanan either. I wish there was something I could have done before any of this happened.
I could have sworn that Heisuke's eyes were puffing up as he slumped his shoulders in defeat.
Where did Sanan go wrong? He drank that damn serum just because he wasn't able to fight alongside us anymore. But nothing could stop him from finding a way to assist the Shinsengumi again. Didn't he know that even though he wasn't able to use a sword anymore, he still mattered to us?
Grief filled the air around us with a thick tension. If we were able to stop Sanan in the past, then maybe none of this would have happened. It felt as though all of us were cycling through our regrets in this moment, wallowing in our own shame. It was Saito, of all people, who was able to break the cloud of silence looming above our conversation.
Commander, where is the chief?
It was a question that none of us were willing to ask, presumably because the answer frightened us. Hijikata bit into his lip, choosing his words carefully before he'd said them, but it seemed that bringing the words to life was a difficult task for him. Hijikata let out a heavy sigh, and his voice quivered as he finally answered Saito's question.
Kondo's been captured by the enemy. He turned himself in so I could escape.
Hearing one piece of bad news after the other put all of us into stunned silence. Back when Kondo and the rest of the Shinsengumi were in Kyoto, they'd spent most of their time rounding up men who'd identified as imperial nationalist warriors. A term referring to those who opposed the shogunate's rule in Japan, citing reasons such as foreign influence and corruption in order to back the imperial restoration of power. Which, as expected, did not end well at all with the members of the Imperial Nationalist Party who did their best to stifle our efforts. It was these men who had custody of Kondo now. What would become of him? Imagining what torturous plans they had in store for him made my heart swell with pain. This feeling must have ached in Hijikata as well, and he turned to gaze at the Cirrus formations above us. Toshi's looking to the clouds a lot in this route.
This isn't exactly a death sentence. There's still a chance that we can save him. No way in hell am I gonna just sit back and let them execute him. I'm a tough bastard to deal with, through and through, and that doesn't end here. Whatever it takes, I'll do it.
Hijikata lowered his gaze to look at Saito.
Saito, take the rest of the men and head to Aizu.
But what about you, Commander?
Don't worry about Hijikata. I've got his back.
Heisuke lifted his forearm to pound at his chest, and his voice beamed with pride. I was unsure if that would be enough to satisfy Saito's concern, but he responded in kind.
Understood. We shall head to Aizu at once.
Okay. I believe in you, Saito.